Welcome into Art of the Call, where we take a stroll down memory lane to some of the best calls in Florida Gators history. I'm Ethan.eibe, joined alongside Jeff Cardozo, Gator baseball broadcaster. Jeff, great to have you with us.
Awesome to be here. Yeah, this is fun. You never really go back and listen to the stuff or remember some of the things. So I'm even excited to get to relive some of the glory days.
Yeah, of course. Well, we'll have a couple of calls that are special to you that we'll get to later on in the program. But first and foremost, this series is meant to educate future Gator broadcast students, like myself, soon to be graduating, something to give them that they can look back on as they are growing in their own broadcast right. So you came from the athlete side.
Yeah.
You were a player here 98 through 2000. Tell us how you kind of made that transition from being a player to the broadcaster.
Yeah, it's just, something I've always been interested in. I was the sports editor of my high school papers, always wanted to do something. And I remember even, we're in a group chat now with the 98 team, and I would sit there and some of those games when I wasn't playing as much as a youngster, just sitting there kind of commentating and goofing off and having a good time in the dugout. And, I think there's a lot of people, especially over the years when, they hear something or see something, they'll even text in there and said, hey, Jeff's living his dream and getting to do all that. So I think it's something that I've always wanted to do. And, I think I obviously was fortunate enough to play here, so that probably helped in getting on the broadcast team and being a part of things. But it was a grind. I went through a lot of different things, certainly worked hard. I see you guys behind the scenes doing all that kind of stuff. And it was the same thing. I mean, maybe not as visible as getting to be on air, but there were opportunities that I got to sit on some broadcasts with Mick, and obviously playing here then helped me in having that relationship. And he was fortunate enough to let me sit in on a few of the things. And then I think one day one of the color analysts couldn't do the game, so Mick was like, hey, come on in here and do it. And I did it, and I guess there was a whole bunch of phone calls the next day. Hey, this skinny dorky guy's pretty good. And I ended up getting to be on the broadcast probably 10 or 11 times the rest of that first year, and then kind of the rest is history. So now 20 years later, we sit here and I've gotten to see a lot of cool things.
Did you ever have any reservations about hopping into the play-by-play chair? Because athletes typically go from being on the field to in that color analyst kind of style. So the first time that you really tried play-by-play at this level, how did your style, I guess, evolve in those early years?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think, again, being able to sit in a little bit on Mick and kind of picking his brain before I did it for real certainly helped. And then getting the opportunity. And with baseball, it's unique, too, because you get to do 3 innings. As the color guy, also getting to do a little play-by-play. So I got my feet wet doing that kind of stuff. And then I think it just evolved into understanding the preparation and what you had to go through. And then I think, there was also times where they needed me to do some games by myself. And then I'm basically already a color guy and then trying to turn into a play-by-play guy, and then you can just sit there and talk to yourself back and forth and really cover it. So I think that's actually been, the hard part on the backside too. Sometimes now when I'm doing the play-by-play, I want to sit there and analyze it, but I've got to hold back and, let the color guy do it. So, but yeah, it wasn't really too difficult. I think just because I knew the game so well and I had already known that that's what I wanted to do for forever. But I do, I don't think, there's a lot of guys that really didn't go through a journalism school or have that type of preparation that can just say, hey, I'm going to all of a sudden go and talk about it. Because you learn the flow and how to talk and when to do different things. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you always feel like you had the voice for it?
I guess so. Yeah, people always said that. I guess I remember it was 8th grade in middle school, and they asked me to do the morning announcements.
So how about
back
that?
in the day. So, that was really early on. So that was when, Magic was getting HIV, and, I remember reading that on the morning announcements. So bringing back the really old memories. But yeah, so I guess I always had the voice and been able to do that, and, goofing off in the school plays and doing all that kind of stuff. I was always kind of able to showcase that.
And growing up watching sports, who were some of those broadcasters that, you recall, you kind of have synonymous with your childhood that you watched growing up that really had an impact on you?
Yeah, there was, I was a huge Braves fan, so of course everybody was on TVS, but I only grew up about 20 miles from where they spring train down in West Palm Beach. So I would always go there and talk to different guys, certainly the Carey family, and I guess I listened. I really like Sunday Night Baseball with John Miller and Joe Morgan. I think that's kind of the one thing that always sticks in my mind of, kind of just trying to be John Miller and, understand what that was all about. And then, even the early like Sports Center days, I know they weren't really like the analysts, but that was when Dan Patrick was doing it and Keith Olbermann and guys like that. And you're sitting there watching and it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I think that's where it helped me though, especially Olbermann, like try to bring humor into everything. And I think, not only on broadcast now, but just the way that I do, even if it's commercials or ask me to do different things, like I don't want to be this hoity-toity type person where, you're serious all the time. You got to goof off and have fun with it. I think that, that showed me that you can bring in a little bit of personality and do different things. And, that certainly helped over the years too.
The John Millers, the Vince Scullys of the world, these icons of play-by-play. For you, from a technical standpoint or just as a fan, what made those guys great and inspiring to you?
Yeah, I think I was probably just hearing them all the time. But then then when you start to pick it up and understand, hey, I can do that, it's just the descriptions of every little thing. And, certainly on radio, you have to do that. You have to be able to describe stuff. And, it's been even fun now, working with different people over the years because I pick up so much from Mick. And then, I even doing baseball games with Sean, who's, technically the voice of the Gators for basketball and football, but then it's my job for baseball. So then, he's even said we've had conversations where he's learned stuff from me where, he's this huge broadcaster that does all these national things. So I think you pick up from every little quirks on different guys and just try to, understand, hey, that's kind of cool, or I like how that sounded, or that's how you have to go about it. So I think that's, just listening and learning over the years and, guys kind of picking up stuff where you think that's kind of cool and then you go with it.
You still refining the craft even now?
Maybe a little bit, but I guess it's been over 20 years, so you kind of just, you have your flow. I think maybe there's just maybe some descriptions that might change over the years if you hear something or you see something that might be a little bit differently. But I think for the most part, I feel like I've got it down and kind of have that style and how I want to go about it.
Early on, was there like a system of self-improvement that you were trying to go after? Were you listening back to games? Was there anything like that?
No, and I guess, for everybody listening, and, it's like I never did that. I never listened to my own stuff, and I think that's what's really weird, and, I probably should have. There's a lot of guys that really like get into it and do that, but I'm not that type of person. I guess just because I'm so busy and I have 8 million other things going on.
You are a man of many talents. See the Sports Lab interview that Jeff and I did not too long ago.
So I think that was always the thing. Maybe you get a little feedback, which I did early on. But yeah, for the most part, I think I do it and then I don't ever hear it again or listen to it again. So I know it's probably bad to say.
That's okay.
And it's not good for, what you guys are trying to do. But, I just, but I'm like that with everything. I try to just, I think for me, like being spontaneous is the most important part about all of it. So you never want to, like, I don't feel like I want to rehearse anything because then I feel like I'll take that into a broadcast. Or, if it's a major call or a big call, like I don't want to say, okay, well, if they win, this is exactly what I'm going to say. It's because the moment will change or it might be something totally different. So I don't think you can rehearse any of those types of things. So I've always tried to do that. Even, I get the luxury of getting to do the UF Hall of Fame inductions and being the MC for that. And, for many, many years, it was just me and the Hall of Famer sitting across from each other. And then a few years ago, they wanted me to start writing out the questions so they can give them to the person. I was like, but then it's like, then they know, like, it's not going to be as real. Like, so they already know the question I'm going to ask them. I'd rather like see the reaction or get something out of them or, tell a funny thing or get something different out of them. So I think that's the way I've always tried to be and, take that to the broadcast as well, just to go about and try to have fun with it and goof off. And, I think bring in just any kind of humor when you can and just be different because, anybody can, call a game and certainly, I mean, there's a lot of good people that do it, but might just talk, but you gotta have that other stuff too.
Yeah. The key phrase being not taking yourself so seriously.
There you go. Very good.
And, how important is that, I guess, for young broadcasters to hear sometimes because they think, they want to be at this level, the level that you're at, and it takes, yes, it takes a lot of work, no doubt about it, but there's a certain, I guess, track of mind you have to think about it where you don't have to take yourself so seriously, right?
Correct. Yeah, no, I think it's totally right. I think that's what makes for the best broadcast. Even just last night doing the baseball game, we had somebody had a basketball national championship shirt on, so we showed it in the stands, and there was one, and then they panned to another one, and then there was another one, and So there's ended up being like 4 or 5 of them, and just for having fun, I look at over my TV partner last night, Nick Bomani, and I was like, oh, Nick Bomani's wearing his tighty whities with the national championship logo on it. So just stuff like that, just to incorporate something different and be able to enjoy it, because it's out of the blue, and I think people like the element of surprise is the fun thing. And yeah, I mean, I'm certainly never one that's going to take myself serious by any means.
They'll put a logo on anything, won't they?
Yeah, they definitely will.
Now, you've always had a knack for nailing those big moments, whether it be a walk-off hit or, as we'll soon see, certain home runs or what have you. But those big moments in the game that require you to be at your best, you have a knack for that. How did you refine and develop that particular skill?
Yeah, I think it's just the preparation and knowing. I think there's a lot of times where you might know a situation, or, I mean, gosh, if you're covering a team, then you'll say, okay, well, I know this kid has never hit a homer. So if it comes up or he ends up hitting a homer, then you know that, hey, that's going to be it. Or if you're prepping and all of a sudden, a guy's like Shelton this year, he got to 50 for career home runs. You just have it in the back of your mind that, okay, when he hits that, you kind of know that if that happens and you're the one doing it, you can incorporate it. So I think that's more than anything, is just make sure you know some of the intricacies of the team and just be able to understand, okay, here's this moment that I can bring it into the call and not just make it the call. Obviously you have to react to it and you have to see what's going on, and you want to try to describe what's happening with the players and where they're going. And I also try to too, I think there's a lot of guys, and I wouldn't say it's lazy, but maybe they don't know the other team enough. But especially if you're doing like a TV broadcast when you're supposed to be sort of partial and doing it both, I always want to use those other players' names. So, understand that, okay, if it's a fly ball to the left or it's a deep fly ball to the left and the guy's running back, don't just say it's a left fielder running to the track. Hey, it's Smith running back to the track, and kind of incorporate that into it. So I'll glance down real quick at who that fielder might be. Or if it's a grounder to short, you don't want to say 6-4-3. You want to say, all right, it's Shelton to Curlin to
Using the
Stripling.
names.
Yeah, use the names and do that. So I think that's a part of it, and so it's really just becoming familiar. I don't think you can just stroll in there and not know anybody about the team, and then certainly doing a little research for the other team helps a lot, because again, it might be, and Mick taught me this, and I thought it was great, and even some of the times where I'd listen to him during football broadcasts, he would always say, he would, like, I'm gonna never forget, it's Brady Ackerman, who used to be the sideline guy for the Gators, and he scored a touchdown against Akron, like in the 90s.
Oh, I see where this is going.
So it's just like Mick made it sound like it was, he just won the Super Bowl.
Wow.
Because, that might be the only touchdown this kid ever has, and then now the parents get to hear the call or get to be a part of something. So I think if you sort of half-ass it, or you just go through the motions and, make it no big deal, then, whatever call that might be can't then, be used. Because, I think, obviously stuff's out on the internet, but, it's probably really cool for someday for one person that hit a home run or scored a touchdown or made a big three, like Bennett Anderson.
Yeah.
I think
How cool is that?
Yeah, you have those moments where now that kid will have that one call that he can play for his kid someday or his grandkid someday. So I think always try to treat every moment like it is sort of a big time moment.
Yeah, 100%. Now, you have a very, particular role with this team, or you have, been a part of Gator baseball for so long. You've built these relationships up with these players that have been here over multiple years. A lot of them come in and they were just like you, players, freshmen who maybe are not as comfortable in media settings. You having been in that position and now on the other side of it where you are the one asking the questions.
Yeah.
Do you kind of take it upon yourself to mentor them through that process a little bit and make them comfortable as they can be?
I do. And I think it goes back to that, not taking yourself too serious. I always say we can't do it here, but I think you find moments where if you know a guy's personality, if they can curse, or you make them feel comfortable by saying something that they might laugh at. Mm-hmm. And I try to approach everybody that way, and obviously then use my experience and say, hey, this is no big deal. And gosh, I even take it a little bit further, with my kids, and I think a role as a dad, you try to embarrass your kids whenever you can.
Yeah.
And, but then I always tell them, like, listen. My daughter's in cheer, and go to a cheer competition or something, and she's so like, I've got to be perfect, I got to do this, and I was like, I can guarantee you that there is no one else in this entire arena watching you except for like your parents. Everybody else is watching their kids or, everything else. So, don't just have fun with it. Like enjoy it. Don't be nervous. I think that's what I try to tell them. I think the more you show a personality as a player, then, the more people are going to want to talk to you. And there's no reason to be scared. Like there's no reason to be shy about anything, especially if you want to play at the next level. You're gonna have to talk all the time. So learn it now and just have fun with it.
100%. Now, baseball is not your only thing. I know you've done some high school football as well. Have there been other sports that you've either called or you've wanted to call to dip into the other broadcasting areas?
Yeah, I've been able to do it all. Obviously, when Mick was here, I couldn't do much because he was always doing. But there was a few basketball games that he didn't do, so I called a few Billy Donovan basketball games back in the day. So that those were always fun. Never had the opportunity to do a football game because, of course, you're not gonna miss that. And but that was what's been fun about. I've done volleyball on the radio, and then now all the high school stuff. So yeah, it's. It's fun, and I've had other opportunities to go somewhere else, like smaller schools, and be the main guy. But then, every time I look at those situations, it's like, well, I'm already here. Like
you're
I'm
established.
A part of, all these great sports and athletics here at the University of Florida. So even if I'm not every call and doing everything, like I love it. I mean, and where else can you go and basically win at everything? I think that's what's really special too, and getting to be around all the coaches and the players and the UAA staff has been really awesome. It'd be tough to go somewhere and kind of all this hard work and the people you've met and relationships you formed over these years is to start something else.
Mm-hmm. Now back to Mick. What was he like as a mentor for you?
I think just where he taught me more than anything was the preparation.
The pitch, swung on, bouncing ball, second base, Lippett on the outfield grass, throws to first. That's it, the ball game is all over. Gloves go flying in the air as the fireworks come bursting out of the stands, out of the outfield. The dog pile is on to the right of the mound. The Gators heaping on one another. Florida has won the national championship in baseball. Oh my, they've done it. They've won it, beating the LSU Tigers.
There were times where he would sit and, I'd just look at his book or whatever it might be, and he just had so much crap in it. And I'm like, Mick, I don't know if anybody cares that this guy was, 4 for 13 against FAMU back on March 2nd. And so I would ask him that, and he would always say, well, if something happened this way, then I'd be able to know that this way and it could connect. And I think that's where I got started. So then again, I probably over-prepped because of some of that stuff, and then you form and realize that, hey, okay, I can now tone it back a little bit. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I need. Kind of the stat pack that you guys see now for baseball. A lot of that was what I got with Sullivan, the sports information guy, and said, hey, here's the cool stuff that broadcasters probably need, and nobody else does it in the league. So I think we have more information than anybody, but you just have to be able to utilize it. You got to be able to understand where it is, and sometimes it looks overwhelming, but you can tone it down and make it how you want. So I think it was that, and then, partly too of going back and saying, hey, make every moment, special for somebody. Because again, it could be some scrub that never plays again, or it could be a guy that has done it for now the 50 or 60th time. But they're all special, and that's the way you have to treat broadcasting.
Absolutely. It's interesting. From my perspective, this is the very beginning of my broadcast career. But I'm absolutely spoiled by these game notes.
Sure.
You've got 50 pages of information. You'll use maybe one of those pages. You have to pare down everything that they give you. So it's always a challenge.
And I think in my book too, what I've been able to establish, I've got now spots where it's tabs and different things.
Yeah.
So I think I see a lot of guys too where maybe they take their scorebook and they'll just write note after note after note on the scorebook, where it takes a lot of time. And again, that was probably me early on, but now I'm at the point where, okay, I've got tabs here, and now if I know if it's a home run, I can in 2 seconds flip to one page, know that this is what I'm looking for because I already know that it's there, and then be able to implement that as a part of a call. So I think you can, everybody's got their own style, but you can take that time and say, okay, I'm just, I'm fighting it tooth and nail, or I'm sitting here and I've like 3 hours into this, I'm never going to use this. Okay, well then now you realize what you don't use, and then be able to then, okay, it's there if I need it, but I'm not necessarily going to ever get to that point. But there are times. I mean, who knew that Bobby Bozer was going to hit 3 homers last night?
Nope.
So you have kind of in your book or your mind that, okay, here's that page that something like that's on, and then just because I've been a part of Gator baseball forever, I knew that it was 10 years to the week that J.J. Schwartz had hit 4 homers. So, I'm saying that before anybody even knew. And then, the guy that's next to me is like, oh, that's so awesome. And then, he ran and actually told the SID guy. So I knew more than that, but just because of that knowledge or instinct of being around it for forever.
Speaking of that, I was scrolling through the game notes last night while the game was still going on, if Bobby came up again.
Yeah.
And J.J. Schwartz's 4-homer game was not in the notes. And the last time that a Gator hit 4 home runs.
Yeah, because they didn't have the 4. They just had 3 with Cags on that page.
I was like, wait a minute, but it's happened before.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, maybe he might get another crack at it at some point, hopefully
that'd be
soon.
cool.
That would be nice. So, one call that's always stuck with me that that you authored some years ago was Austin Langworthy's walk-off homer that sent the Gators to Omaha in 2018. Games tied at 2 against Auburn, bottom of the 11th inning. He ropes one. He goes off the outfielder's glove. In fact, you know what? We have it here with us. And
sweet.
And I want you to relive it. So go right ahead.
Now a ball and 2 strikes. Fastball hit out towards left pretty well. Williams going back off of his glove, and it's out of here. Lang with a bang. Heads up Omaha. The Gators are coming back to defend their title. A mob scene at home plate. And the Gators have done it.
You hear the emotion there.
Line drive that hit off Williams' glove and ricocheted over the wall. And the Gators dogpile in front of the plate. And what is just an unbelievable scene and an unbelievable game. And for the 4th consecutive year, Florida has advanced to the College World Series.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I guess it does incorporate some of that stuff. I mean, so in the call, Williams is going back, and it's off of his glove. So you describe, who the player was and how that ball ended up getting out of here. And it's cool seeing that again because obviously you're remembering some of the stuff now in the environment, and that College World Series logo was right there perfectly in it, just to his right as the ball got over the wall. And that was such a crazy series game, certainly. And I mean, I think about even the opener, the first game of that Super Regional. It was Casey Mize, who was #1 pick in the draft, going against Brady Singer.
Wow.
And so that was we thought this was going to be a pitcher's duel. The Gators get down 2-0. They score a couple runs off Singer, and then all of a sudden, Gators get to Casey Mize, who ends up being the #1 pick that year. So we win that one, and then Jackson Coar was the second game, and he was great. Michael Byrne ended up pitching all 3 games, but Byrne actually blew that one in the second game. So then they have to bring in Byrne for the third game, and he ends up going 4 scoreless. And I mean, I think he only gave up 1 hit to Auburn. But I think more than anything, that game, and it was cool that it was Langworthy because there was twice in that game where Langworthy got robbed. I mean, the center fielder made a heck of a play on one, and they ended up getting a double play out of it because Florida was going to score, and the center fielder just robs one. That was, I think, maybe the 5th or 6th inning. In the 8th inning, the left fielder robs one. That would have been a double in the gap by Langworthy. So he's smoking the ball all over the yard, left and right. And then the neat part about that was, so Florida was down 2-1 in the second game, and Langworthy hits a solo homer to tie it. And then Auburn scores in the bottom of the ninth to win it 3-2. But that was off the same guy that he hit the homer off the next night.
Yep.
And I remember Auburn's guys were throwing so hard. I mean, now we see 97, 98 all the time.
It's regular.
But these dudes back then, they were 94, 95. And the Auburn guy had pitched the night before too and ended up winning. And then, he made a mistake. The catcher was set up way off the plate. And he gave one down and into a lefty, kind of is right where a lefty wants it, and Lang put a good swing on it. But I think that, as a part of that call then too, you can't then rehearse that. You don't
No.
know it's going to be Langworthy, or you know how it's going to be. And then, I had called him Lang. Everybody's got their nicknames and stuff. And then obviously hit a bang off the glove.
So you're saying Lang with a bang never like entered your mind before that moment?
Never entered my mind. It was just that was the whole spontaneity of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that never happened. And then of course, as he's rounding, you're like, oh, sweet, the Gators go back to Omaha to defend the title.
Yeah.
So you got to put that in there. And then, and it's just, in 2017 we had won it, and that was the last year that Mick was doing baseball broadcast.
Right.
And he was on the call when we won the national title. So, he's getting really emotional. I'm crying next to him, and like we're hugging in the booth and, doing all these things. And I kind of felt that, again, just that opportunity to now be able to call that, and certainly all the history and emotion of me in this program and everything that's involved with it. It was pretty special. So, but I mean, I think that's, good. I think certainly if you're a broadcaster of a team, you're invested, and
no doubt.
You're right there with everybody else. You go through the ups and downs, and all the times that Sully's yelling at guys and pissed off at them, I'm kind of the same way. And then all the highs, certainly when their smiles are out there, and you're hugging guys left and right. It's pretty special, as much time as you spend with everybody.
Does it all blend together, or are there those lasting memories that really stick with you?
Yeah, I think it's probably the lasting memories. Again, I mean, there's probably not a lot of games I could go back and tell you about different things. I mean, certain that pop up into a mind, like a certain play or a certain thing, but I mean, you probably go back 2 weeks right now, and I couldn't tell you some of the things that happened.
Yeah.
Unless you saw it on video again, and it's just
Sure.
It's hard to remember because they all get in together. But yeah, the bigger moments are pretty special.
One thing that I got from Sean Kelly and from Kyle Crooks earlier was, they had to go back and listen and rewatch these exact moments to even remember what they said. Was that the same case for you with this kind of a call?
No, I think Lang with a Bang was, and they play it all the time now in the stadium.
Yeah, that's true. You get to you are reminded of it quite often.
So do you hear that one? But yeah, there's certainly other ones like, oh, sweet, I didn't realize I said that, or that's what that was. So I think there's probably a lot of those moments that you forget about, and just how they ended up shaping out.
Mm-hmm. There is one more that I have for you.
Okay.
It's Jordan Butler, 2019 in April, hitting a walk-off home run to win the series for the Gators against South Carolina, regular season. But it just had such a great one-liner that I just wanted to remind you of. So the last clip would do it.
Butler hits one out towards right field. Olsen didn't see it at first. This ball is gone. The Butler did it. A 3-run blast here in the bottom of the 9th inning has just given Jordan Butler his second homer of the game, his 4th hit of the game, and the Gators a series win over the South Carolina Gamecocks.
So yeah, I think in that too, at the end there, where you try to describe the call and then you add more to it. I think certainly let it play out is what I always try to do. But then by the time the guy maybe gets to third, then it's like, okay, this is home run number 17, or this is his 8th hit of the weekend, whatever it might be. Try to incorporate that stuff in there, and then by the time he catches home plate and all the celebrations going on, and then you can kind of get into that stuff. But I guess I owe that one to my grandma.
Yeah.
Because we played Clue all the time.
Oh, my goodness.
Like it was Canasta and Clue and different board games before phones and everything that went on. So yeah, so always. That's crazy. So that would be one where I totally forgot that that's something that you even said.
Yeah, actually, I played Clue growing up as well, by the way. So,
all right, so we're not too far apart.
No,
then.
For sure. I always tried to be Mr. Green or Colonel Mustard or something like that. So, but yeah, it's those one-liners. I guess you just have. There's an it factor that goes into this, you got to say, right?
Yeah, and I think maybe again that's where being spontaneous about it is just whatever comes to your mind. And sometimes maybe not that greatest thing ever is going to show up, but I think more often than not, whatever might be said is certainly. And I think I'll listen to guys too, and like you could tell that it was rehearsed, and you can just tell like, hey, that's what was planned, or that's what they were trying to do, and it's still a cool moment or whatever it might be, but it's just not as genuine to me. So
right.
I think being able to do that and just being able to watch something play out and see how it shapes up, and whatever is going through your mind at that moment is probably the best thing to say, because again, you're invested, you're a part of this. So whatever comes is because of all that hard work and all the ups and downs and the grind that you've been through just along right with those guys. And, I think maybe playing a little bit too and kind of understanding their feelings, their emotions, or what they might be going through in that moment probably helps at some of those times too.
100%. Now, I appreciate the time. I only have a couple more. Brown-eyed, handsome man.
Yosel round third, head for home. He's a brown-eyed, handsome man, and it's back-to-back doubles for the Gators.
Yeah.
That's your thing. It's always been your thing, it seems. Obviously, it comes from the center field song, John Fogerty.
Round third and headed for home. It's a brown-eyed, handsome man.
When did you start using that, and kind of how did that take hold for you?
Yeah, I think probably, as we go back and, you were asking those questions on things, how they form or what they might happen. I think just for so many years, you're at a baseball field and that's the song that plays, right?
Yeah, of course.
Everybody knows that song, and I would always sing it. And as pitchers, I could actually hit in high school, though. I told them I could hit in college. They just, of course, never let me. But as a pitcher, you're bored all the time. You're on the bucket or you're shagging balls 3 times a day, and so you always hear that song. So then you start singing, and I'm goofy, so I'm singing and goofing off, and so it's always in my mind. And then now all of a sudden, just as calls are happening or you're starting to broadcast, and it was, hey, he's rounding third, he's heading for home. And then that's, I just leave it at that, and then he slides in or whatever it might be. And then, I think just one day it actually slipped out by just chance.
Wow.
So he's rounding third, heading for home, brown-eyed, handsome man.
Cue the song.
Shelton ready for the 1-1, and he puts one out into the gap in left center field. Bozer will round third, head for home. He's a brown-eyed, handsome man. Shelton trying for 2, and he's...
And, it happened, and, I kind of just, I liked how it sounded, so then I started saying it, and, but then I think, you can't say it every time, because then if you're playing highlights, it's every single time. So I try, if I know that I said it already once, maybe if it's 5 or 6 innings later, I'll say it again, but never usually more than twice or so a game to do it. So yeah, I won't do it every single time, but, I think there's certainly those bigger moments if it's important. And you have to know the dude's going to score, too. Like,
That's
it better
true.
be a double in the gap.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden a throw's coming to the plate and you're about to say he's a brown-eyed, handsome man, he gets tagged out, then you're like, uh-oh.
Has that ever happened?
No.
Thank God. Okay,
so,
yeah.
I'll do it. So make sure that, hey, this guy's going to score. It's going to be good.
Yeah, 100%. Everyone's got their catchphrases around here. You've
Yeah.
got "Oh my," of course, is mixed phrase, and "Chomp this one up for the Gators" is Sean's, and he even rang that in for the national championship recently. So that was pretty cool. But everybody's got their thing.
Yeah.
Well, my last question for you: when you're talking to up-and-coming broadcasters, like the ones who may be watching this, what is the number one piece of advice you would give them?
Probably the prep and the have fun. I guess that's two different advices, but I think just make sure that you love it and you want to do it, and this is something, because it's a grind. It's hard, and there's a lot of people that I know that took different routes, and they struggled in Toledo or Topeka or these just random spots and barely got any money, but you have to love it, and you've got to. And if you're good enough, they're going to find you, and they're going to be able to say, okay, yeah, you're going to be able to do this. So I think just make sure you really, really love it, and there's excitement when you show up at the ballpark. Even 20 years later, I'm excited. Even if it's 40 games into the season, whatever it might be, I'm like, all right, sweet, let's go. Like it's time, and that might be after a 12-inning game that took 5 hours the night before, and you're like, man, this sucks. I'm never doing this again. But you just when you know that you wake up the next day and you want to do it again, then that's really the part of it. So yeah, do your prep work and understand that hey, this is going to be a grind. It's going to be really, really hard to do, but if you put your mind to it, if you put in that effort, and you certainly work hard at it, somebody's going to find you wherever it might be. And it's I guess it's cliche, but yeah, just don't give up if you really have that passion for it.
Because you never know what you're going to see at the ballpark.
Sure.
You could see a Bobby Bozer 3-homer game. You could see a J.J. Schwartz 4-homer game, or anything in between.
And you never know who's watching or listening too. And
Yeah.
I think that's a part of it too. If you're doing a minor league game and the middle of nowhere, there could be some scout or some dude that's driving from one place to the next, or he gets off the airplane and he wants to listen to how his AA player is playing, and all of a sudden he's like, man, did you hear that guy in Wichita or whatever it might be, and he's pretty darn good. And then he might go tell the you know, somebody back in the big league camp, and then you might get a job or do something.
Every day is an audition.
Sure, no question.
No doubt about it.
Good way to say it.
Jeff Cardozo, it's been a pleasure as always.
Awesome, Ethan.
Thanks so much. I'm Ethan Ibe. This has been Art of the Call.